By my count, we've added 44 minutes and 27 seconds of daylight since winter solstice in December 21. That's the holiday I like to celebrate. Welcome to our first Second Sunday Garden Forum in 2026, presented by Project Green and the Iowa City Public Library. My name is Linda Schreiber. Our garden forums offer great gardening tips and inspire me for the growing season to come. Project Green garden forums are free and open to the public, and attendance provides continuing education credit hours. Our thanks go to Beth Fisher, Bon Drager, and the Iowa City Public Library staff for hosting the presentations and providing our presenters with technical assistance. Today's program is live streamed on the Iowa City Public Library's YouTube channel and can be viewed there at any time. Project Green formed in 1968. Our nonprofit organization has devoted resources to beautifying green spaces and educating the public about the environment and conservation practices. Our volunteers donated nearly 1,200 hours of service in Project Green Gardens last year. If you're a Project Green Garden volunteer, please stand to be recognized. Project Green retired its annual and very successful plant sale in 2018 and now relies on financial contributions to enable us to continue our work. Your service and financial support is greatly appreciated. You can invest in Project Green in one of three ways: through our website, projectgreen.org, at the Community Foundation of Johnson County to the Project Green Endowment Fund, or via the City of Iowa City's Green Fund. Watch for details about Project Green activities on our website and social media. Today, we'll follow the format of our previous forums. Our speaker will present for 45 minutes to an hour. We'll take a break. Our in-house guests are invited to enjoy a hot beverage in the back of the room. And we ask our in-house audience to come up to the front table where we have a clipboard to write out your questions for the presenter. This is important because our programs are live streamed and our viewing audience cannot hear the questions without a microphone. When we reconvene, our speaker will respond to your questions. Now, please take a minute to silence your cell phones. Following, I did mine. Oops, here it is. Following the sale of land that might have added to Iowa City's Hickory Hill Park, our Project Green founder, Nancy Seiberling, formed the Johnson County Heritage Trust in 1978. The trust's first protected property, Turkey Creek Nature Preserve, was donated in 1981. In 2015, the organization adopted the name Bur Oak Land Trust to reflect its mission of responsible land management. The nonprofit trust works with property owners who want their natural areas permanently protected. Our speaker, Jason Taylor, has been a strong advocate for land conservation throughout the region, expanding efforts to safeguard natural habitats and for future generations. His leadership demonstrates his deep commitment to environmental stewardship and community engagement. Before joining Bur Oak, Jason worked with VentureLab.org and Project Lead the Way, where he developed innovative STEM curriculum strategies transforming learning experiences. He's a Marine, once a Marine, always a Marine, and holds a BS in environmental science and an MA in educational measurement and statistics from the University of Iowa. Please welcome Jason.
Thank you. First, I got Mike. Sounds good. All right, excellent. Well, thanks everyone for coming. As with most weekends in Iowa City, there's a lot of stuff going on right now, and you guys are choosing to be here with me and with us, so thank you for doing so. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're doing at Bur Oak Land Trust, why we're doing it, and then a little bit about some of the projects that we have coming up in the near future. absolutely encourage people to write the questions down after the session up here. There's a lot of really cool stuff that we are doing, and I want to share all of it with you. So first I'm going to start with, in 2020, like many organizations, we got hit a little bit with COVID. And so we decided to rebrand. We decided to step back and really look at our mission, try to figure out what we were doing as an organization for this community. And that's when we also rewrote our mission statement. And this is a really critical piece to this because all the work that nonprofits do really should hinge around what their mission is. And we reworked ours to really focus on the thing that I feel is so incredibly important for us and other nature-based or environmental organizations to be focusing on, and that is biodiversity. So I'm going to talk a little bit about why biodiversity is at the core of everything that we do and why it's so critical for us to think about it every time we're making decisions as an organization, and also honestly as landowners, as homeowners, citizens of the world, why biodiversity is so critically important. So the main goal of Bur Oak Land Trust is to do this, to protect and restore the land. We have the ability to work with landowners in eastern Iowa to try to maintain their properties, to protect them in perpetuity. That is not an easy thing to do because all of the land is transferred, right? No one's going to own it forever. After you pass away, something's going to happen to that land. And so if it goes to a family member, if you sell it, they get to make decisions on how they're going to do what with that land. And so what we do as an organization is we try to step in and we put legal protections on properties. We make sure that those properties are protected forever. And this is one of the amazing things that Nancy, her vision back in the 70s was that she wanted to try to develop a way to actually have land be protected forever and not rely on the county government or the state government. She saw that there were going to be some concerns or issues with that. And so land trusts were, had been established in other parts of the country. And so that's what Nancy worked on, is establishing a land trust to try to do this work. You may recognize this. This is a very urban area, but this in the background, I'm probably... this is 218 turned into 380 over here. And we own this little 12-acre portion of land. It's a great example of what we do. This was a property that was actually donated to us by a developer. And when we went out there, the first thing we realized it was absolutely full of buckthorn, a super invasive species. But once you were able to kind of dig your way through the buckthorn, we found some of those amazing oak trees on this property. And it is an absolutely beautiful property. It has orchid species, it has all sorts of spring ephemerals. But what we're really fighting are the invasives out there. And so this one is a good example. It's very close to Iowa City. My guess is no one has ever been on this property before. But it is a beautiful one that we want to try to reestablish so that the public can enjoy it and so that our biodiversity levels can be increased out there. As I mentioned, our renewed focus was on biodiversity. So I'm sure all of you have heard that term, biological diversity, trying to increase the number of native species that should be on a property. All the pictures up here are of amazing species that we have in Iowa. These actually are all in Johnson County. This shooting star is actually a spring ephemeral that was taken on that property that was so full of buckthorn. There's a hillside that's absolutely full of shooting star. Rusty patch bumblebee, an endangered bumblebee species. You probably all have heard of it at this point in time, but a couple of years ago when it became endangered, not many people had heard of it. In Johnson County, we do have a really thriving population, and I'll talk a little bit about how we've actually become one of the priority zones for this species in Iowa. We're the only county in Iowa that has actual critical habitat for the rusty patch bumblebee, and it's due to a lot of the work that volunteers did with Bur Oak Land Trust. And the species on the right is the spiranthes, or one of the spiranthes orchids. Iowa has 36 native orchid species. You guys probably know this. You're very plant-centric. But that often confuses people. People think that orchids are something that only grow in the tropics. We have a lot of amazing things here in Iowa. You'd have to dig for it, though. You're not going to see any of these driving on the interstate. You're not going to see any of these in the middle of town. I will say that, but then I also had rusty patch bumblebees in my yard because I had a prairie. And so you really have to dig for some of these things if you really want to do it. And so that's what we really like to do, is get people out into nature to show them the beauty that's out there. So why biodiversity? Why are we focused on this? Why would we have a nonprofit, an organization that is so focused on this one thing, biodiversity. There were a lot of reports that came out in 2019 and a couple subsequent ones that talk about the reasons why biodiversity, focusing on biodiversity, is so critically important. The first came out in Nature 2019. Plant extinctions across the world are happening at a rate that is 500 times faster than normal. Things go extinct, we know this, but through human intervention, things are going extinct faster. That's a problem. Another UN report, over 1 million species are threatened with extinction, many of them within the next couple of decades, but within a couple hundred years, they're predicting about 1 million species are going to go extinct. So why is that a problem? Well, we don't really understand the web of life. You open up any sort of ecology or biology textbook, and you're going to see this amazing picture where it has all these, like, you know, a squirrel and a tree and a rabbit, and they all have lines between each other, and how the rabbit eats the grass, and, you know, the poop fertilizes the tree. There's this really great web of life picture that's documented, and it's not all there, right? There's all sorts of stuff that's happening that we don't understand yet, that we don't know about. There's a lot of species that are out there that we don't know about at this point. And so with that web of life, when you start removing those individual species because of extinction events, we don't know when that web is going to collapse. And when it does, you have whole ecological collapse in some areas. This is going to be a problem for a lot of things, including people. And so it's going to make a lot of parts of the world very unpleasant to live in, and it's going to make a lot of species in this planet really start to go downhill very quickly. Third report, also 2019, came out, a net loss of 3 billion birds in North America since 1970. So we have a lot fewer birds. I'm sure all of you have noticed this. You go outside, you do not hear the birds nearly as much as you used to when you were younger. I used to hear whippoorwills all the time when I grew up in southeast Iowa. You do not hear them very much anymore. This is the same thing with insects, butterflies on your windscreen. I mean, I know that you guys remember back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, you would have to clean off your windshield a lot more frequently because of all the bugs that you'd be hitting with that car. You're not seeing that nearly as much anymore. So there's a lot fewer insects, a lot fewer birds than there used to be. This is really interesting because here, this decline in grasslands, a 50% decline in grassland bird species in North America. So we have half of the grassland bird species that we had, number-wise, since 1970s. And a lot of that is because of the lack of true grassland. And so often what times is happening is you have these beautiful prairies, and then all of a sudden you have trees start popping up in them. And everyone always thinks they equate trees are good for the environment, trees are the lungs of the world and all that stuff. If you have trees in the wrong area, it wrecks that ecosystem. Because now those grassland areas that have trees, because the birds of prey will pick off the young very easily. And so they no longer feel safe, they're going to move on, or they're no longer going to have a place to raise their young. That's a problem. And then the fourth one, this one's more recent, came out in 2023. If you have not seen this report, I'm going to link to it on the next page. If you have not seen this report, I highly encourage you. The fact that you're here makes me think you care about this stuff. And if you care about this stuff, you should absolutely read this report. It came out, it's from a company called NatureServe in 2023. They talk about biodiversity, talk about extinction and the collapses. 34% of plants and 40% of animals are currently at risk of extinction in the United States. 41% of all the ecosystems within the United States are also at risk of collapse. That's a problem. This is the report. It's small, a lot of pictures. This is how you get to it. QR code, you can also find it called Biodiversity in Focus, United States Edition. They have these for other countries. You're not going to be able to read this. I don't expect you to, but I'm going to talk a little bit about it and why it's important. So you're going to notice that there's a lot of red, yellows, grays, blues, etc. And the chart goes from possibly extinct, critically imperiled, and it's something I cannot read from up here. It is vulnerable. This is where you do not want species to be, in the kind of brownish all the way over into the yellow-gray. You don't want species there because that means that they, as a whole, as a family of individuals, is currently at risk in the United States. That we currently see up here. We have down at the bottom birds. Birds are fairly safe. Up at the top, freshwater snails, terrestrial snails, freshwater mussels, crayfish, shrimp, caddisfly, mayflies, stoneflies. What are all the things that are in common with a lot of these up here at the top? Water. It's a water quality issue, right? So this is the United States. We're in Iowa. We have a lot of these things. Water quality is a massive problem here. When you start polluting your water, you start killing off species. It's very easy. We've done a phenomenal job of polluting our water in Iowa over the last 50 years. That's why we have a real problem with biodiversity in this state. Other things as well. As you go down the list, you're going to start to see there's some stuff we don't know much about. Bees, potentially extinct. The largest number of potentially extinct animals on here is on bees. It's a huge percentage. We do not know if they're extinct or not because not a lot of research is being done. I was talking about the rusty patch bumblebee. When you take a look at the current locations as to where they're finding rusty patch bumblebees, if you ever see that map, what you're going to find is that there's big populations of rusty patch bumblebees wherever there's a Big Ten university. Why is that? What? Yeah, people are looking for them. People care about it. People are doing research. People are out looking for them. It doesn't mean that they're, Minnesota fans or Iowa fans or anything like that. It means that those individuals in those communities, like yourselves, care about this stuff, and therefore they're out there looking for them. So this chart is very interesting because everyone focuses in on the stuff that they see every single day. Birds. You see a lot of birds. Butterflies. We talked about butterflies earlier. Mammals. They're fairly safe at this point in time. The things that you do not see every day, the things that you probably don't think about at all, are the things up here. Terrestrial snails. I don't know the last time you saw a terrestrial snail, but you probably don't either. And so a lot of the stuff that's out there is hidden. It's not the poster species. It's not the polar bear. It's not the bald eagle. Those are the things that we have to really be worrying about. Yes, care about the bald eagles, absolutely, but you also have to worry about the little things like the crayfish. So the reason that this is a problem, that biodiversity loss is happening, three things. You have habitat loss, you have habitat fragmentation, you have habitat degradation. Those three things are the cause of almost all of the biodiversity losses in the entire world. All three of those things happen in the United States, happen in every country, happen in Iowa. If you look, this is from that same report, if you look here at the threats to the imperiled species, why are these things going away? You're going to notice plants and terrestrial animals, the largest problem that we have is the threat of invasive species. This is why the whole concept of rewilding that kind of kicked off over in the UK does not necessarily work. Because you cannot let stuff just grow, because what's going to grow there is often invasive species, and those species are going to do so well, they have no natural predators, and they're going to wipe out the native biodiversity. This is why a lot of the work that we do at Bur Oak Land Trust is the kind of grueling work that many of you have done before, where you're getting rid of, you're pulling, you're burning, you're digging out all those invasive species. This is why it's so vastly important. If we did not do that, more species are going to go extinct. Number two, agriculture. We're in Iowa. 85% of our entire state is tilled right now. 85% of our entire ecosystem as a state went from thousands of species living on it to two, corn and soybeans. We've scientifically designed this state so that it has the ability to raise two species of plants, neither of them native to this area. That's a problem. So all this stuff that used to grow here no longer can grow here. And what do we get for it in return? We get ethanol. That's a problem. Freshwater animals. Number one, why are the freshwater animals going extinct? We already talked about it, pollution. Everything that we do, all the stuff that we're putting into the air, all the stuff that we're putting into the water, is killing off all those species. If you are a freshwater clam in this state, you can't exactly move out of the water source that is so polluted. I don't know, so many of you have probably been over to Muscatine. There's the Pearl Button Museum. Have some of you been over there? It's an amazing place, right? And so they have these beautiful examples of the shells, and they have these punches through them where they got the buttons from. If you ever pick up those shells, what did you notice about them? Thick and heavy. Shells were thick and heavy back in the early 2000s, late 1900s. I'm sorry, not early 2000s. The early 1900s, late 1800s. Those were thick and heavy. Have you felt a clam shell recently? It's thin. You can crush it with your hand. It's all the stuff that's in the water. It does not allow them to grow like they used to grow. They die more easily now. If a clam now is captured by a raccoon, they'll close up, but the raccoon has the ability to crush it. You could not do that with a clam of old. And so not only are we polluting their waters, all the stuff that they're living in, but we're also destroying their ability to protect themselves. So that's just a very small example, but a good example of why pollution is hurting our freshwater animals. In Iowa, we have over 500 species that are currently listed as either endangered, threatened, or special concern. The answer to this from the government, the state government, was to get rid of the classification of special concern species. If you get rid of 300 species, then you don't have to worry about it. It's like saying, if we want to try to stop how many people are getting the flu, stop testing for the flu. So the answer is not necessarily to stop looking and stop testing and stop thinking about these things. It's to think about why they're going away. Why are these species dying off? Why can we not destroy their habitat? It's because we have habitat loss, the absolute removal of habitat, have a prairie, put a parking lot on it, a fragmentation, have a prairie, put a road, degradation. Take that prairie, let cedar trees grow on your prairie. You're reducing your biodiversity by allowing trees to grow on a prairie. That's degradation. In Iowa, we have, these numbers are a little bit old, so fact check me on this one, but we have 7 mammal species, 13 bird species. Almost all of our butterfly species are currently listed on here. 386 plant species are listed as endangered, threatened, or special concern. It's because we got rid of where they live. 80%, 85% of that ground is tilled. There's really cool stuff here. The least shrew. Anyone know what's cool about the least shrew? It's one of the world's only venomous mammals, and it lives in Iowa.
What's it called now?
The least shrew. It's small. You see it run, it's going to look like a mouse with a pointy nose. It's not going to hurt you, but what it does, it can chew the venom into its victims, like a caterpillar, and it will paralyze it, takes it back to its den for its babies to eat off of. It's a very cool species. We used to have a lot more in the state of Iowa. Pearl-eyed mussel. On the right, what do we have? Cactus. How many of you have seen cactuses in Iowa? Yeah, this group would have seen cactus in Iowa. Most people don't raise their hand when I ask that question. We have a couple different species of cactus in Iowa. It's amazing. If you've never seen a blooming cactus in this state, it's a bee species that specializes on harvesting pollen and nectar from cactus in the state of Iowa. It does also have the ability to harvest on other things, but we existed, this state existed in a much more naturalized state in the past where we would have the ability to have bee species specialize on cactus. They would be very hungry bees if they were to do so today. So why is this? This is a great map that was developed by INHF. One of the cool things that I love to talk about is the collaboration between organizations in the state of Iowa that are focused on environmental work. If you are not collaborating in this state and your focus is on environmental or conservation, then you're doing it wrong. There's so many threats against us. There are so many punches that we're constantly trying to avoid that we have to work together. And so we have great partnerships with groups like INHF, TNC, the DNR, county conservation groups. We all try to work together. It's not a competitive thing, it's a collaborative thing, and I absolutely love it. This map was created by INHF, and it shows the land cover of Iowa pre-settlement, 1830, 1850, right when the European settlers were starting to come to Iowa. You have a lot of yellow, you have a little blue, and you have a little bit of green. What's that yellow? Prairie, right? Every place that there was any dry ground in this state was prairie. And then as you got close to the riparian zones, anything that was a river or a creek, you would get more into these areas that were wetter, and then you would have trees. So part of the reason for this is that Iowa used to burn from river to river. You would have fires that would go across this state. There's not a whole lot of in the state of Iowa like you would have over in Europe or in Asia. We have a lot of mountains, oceans, seas, things like that. You don't got that in Iowa. And so if there was a dry area that had prairie and it caught on fire, it would burn up all the little saplings and things like that that probably would have started growing there. As you get closer to rivers, that ground moisture is going to be a lot higher, and you're going to grow different types of species there, species that don't burn as well. So think about your maples, things like that. And so this is one of the reasons that we had so much prairie in Iowa, is because we had fire in Iowa. Move forward. What's the gray? Corn and soybeans, tilled ground. So most of our state went from yellow to gray. The yellow that's on here isn't even prairie. The yellow that's on here is pasture land. And so you still have a decent amount of pasture land, especially in the south, but not many other parts of Iowa really do. The Lust Hills region is very special, has some very interesting stuff over there, still has some pretty unique biodiversity over there, but it's currently at threat from the cedar trees. 95% reduction in wetlands in this state. So all those amphibians, all those mayflies, all those dragonflies, gone. 98% reduction in prairie. Thousands of species that used to live on all those acres currently gone. So why does Bur Oak focus on biodiversity? Everything I just said. It's not going to fix itself. It's a small organization. There's no chance that we're going to be able to fix this in the state of Iowa, right? But we can be a catalyst. We have the ability to hopefully inspire others, but then also work with people to help protect their land, help them manage their land, and then also train people on how to do some of this work. So one of the biggest things that we've done is the year I became the executive director in 2019, we started an AmeriCorps program. We've had about 80 people go through it. And we're training that next generation of individuals to do this type of work. It's very important to us. And so the land stewardship component of this is everything that we do to take care of this land, we teach people how to do that. It's important for everyone in this room to know why, how to do it, but it's also very important for a younger generation to know. So what we're able to do, when I started working at Bur Oak, it was a 2.5 FTE, so 2.5 staff members. 1 half-time, 2 full-time. Now we're about at 16 full-time equivalents because of the AmeriCorps program. And so we went from about 1,800 hours per year working on the land to over 15,000 hours per year working on the land. That's what's necessary. This is what allows us to at least tread water and not, be swimming with the current backwards. And so all the properties that we have, we try to manage them very aggressively, because there's so much work that needs to be done. Every single acre that we own should be burned on some sort of a cycle. A lot of it has not. The lack of fire in this state is one of the main reasons that we have a problem with invasive species. We don't just work on our properties, but we also work on other landowners. And so through our AmeriCorps program, we have what's called a fee-for-service program. If you need a fire done, a burn done on your property, we have the ability to do it. If you want consultant work, we have the ability to do it. We collaborate with all those groups that I mentioned before because we can't do it by ourselves. And so one of the greatest things that we've been able to do is develop this amazing network of fire professionals in Iowa, but we're focusing on eastern Iowa. And so when there's a Nature Conservancy property that needs to be burned, we have individuals from Bur Oak Land Trust, from INHF, from TNC. We have individuals from 2 or 3 different county conservation groups, from the DNR, from Fish and Wildlife. They all come together to get the work done. And so through that model, we have the ability to burn a lot more, ability to work on a lot more property across this state. So as I mentioned before, our goal is to protect land in perpetuity. One of the problems that we have is through something like the NRCS CRP program. Many of you probably heard of it, but it allows farmers to take land that was cropped and put it into prairie for a set number of years, and it's an amazing program. At the end of those years that they're in contract, though, they have the ability to put it back into corn and soybeans. And so for a short period of time, you're trying to reestablish prairie, but we're not going to win. We're continually put things back into corn and soybeans. And so our goal is to not protect things for a day, a week, 10 years, a century. Our goal is to protect things forever. And so what we want to try to do is figure out a way to protect more land in Iowa that's in its native habitat for a much longer period of time. That land is generally donated to us. Land in Iowa is expensive. We don't have the ability as a small nonprofit to be able to pay for a lot of land. We have purchased land in the past if it's very special, but most of that land is donated to us by people that we are working with, landowners that we're working with. We also have the ability to put what's called a conservation easement on properties. And so if you own a piece of property, you want to still maintain it, you want to own it, but you want to make sure it's protected forever, we have the ability to put a legal instrument on that property that in the future, no matter who owns it, sure that you don't have a strip mall on a valuable piece of property that you once had. So how do we make these decisions? We have a lot of people will come to us and they say, hey, I'm interested in donating a piece of property. Again, we're a small organization, so we have to really prioritize everything. There's a lot of factors that we think about every time we have a property, we are approached about a property. We want to think about the size. Larger is generally better. The smallest property we have, though, is just outside of Solon, is less than an acre in size. It has a huge number of moths that live on it. You don't hear that a lot, right? But we have a lot more moth species in Iowa than we do butterfly species. And so it's really cool to have a property that has such a high density of moth species. We want to know what's on that property currently. If it is corn and soybeans, can you restore it? Yes, you can, but it's very expensive to do that. If it is prairie or if it is prairie adjacent, it's sometimes more easy to restore that land. What's your current load of native invasive species? What's the cost of it to the organization? Are there threatened and endangered species on it? If there are, that raises that priority for protecting it very high. There aren't a lot of properties that have high loads of threatened and endangered species. We think about all these things, then we put it into a big matrix to make a determination as to whether or not we are going to be able to work on protect that property. It is one thing to have these amazing pieces of land, have these amazing species, and then not share it with anyone. We don't want to do that. We think it's really important for us to be able to share all of this work that we're doing, but then all these amazing properties with the public. Part of that is because we're publicly funded. If you don't know what we're doing and you don't see the results of the work that we're doing, you're not necessarily going to care about it. And so that's why it's so important for us to showcase a lot of the work that we're doing. We absolutely love taking people out on tours, on hikes. It's one of the best parts of my job. I could absolutely be in an office working on expense reports and 990s and all that fun stuff, or I could be out on a property walking around talking about cool stuff with people. And so we love when people come to us, ask us, hey, would you be able to go out on this property with us, with our kids? We want to do that. We want to showcase the work that we've been doing. We also have on our website maps of all of our properties that are open to the public, and people have the ability to download those through All Trails or through just the website, and you can go out to allow them on your own. Not all of our properties are open to the public all the time. The reason for that is there's a variety of things that we want to make sure are managed properly, and also there have been some donors that did not want the properties to be open to the public. And so we have to respect their wishes, basically. One of the interesting things that we've been getting into in the past couple of years with our AmeriCorps program is this idea of ecosystems modeling. At first, I wasn't in love with it because it puts a lot of what we do into more of a financial sense. Instead of just it being inherently good to protect the prairie, what ecosystems modeling does is it tries to say why it is good financially. And so one of the great classic examples is every single acre of prairie or timber in Iowa has a value to the entire world because it captures carbon. How much carbon does it capture? It depends on how old the species are, how thick some of the species are, if they are invasive species or not, all these other things. And so what we're attempting to do is to establish, the value of some of our properties to the world or to the community by looking at this ecosystems modeling. The reason that this is important is it ties into some of the financial side with grants that we're able to apply for. And so sometimes people want to say, like, yeah, it's cool that you're restoring a prairie. Why is that important? What good is that to us? We can then say, this is the reason why. This is how much rainwater it is capturing instead of just pushing it right over into a river or a lake. This is the wetland that's being created. These are all the species that are being created, and here's the value to the carbon capture. One of the properties that we have, this is in Coralville, or just north of Coralville, just south of North Liberty, it's technically in county land, really highlights all of the stuff that I've been talking about with regards to degradation and the basically abuse of land over the last couple hundred years. And so we have a document in Iowa, if you've never seen it before, it's absolutely amazing, called the 1875 Andreas Atlas. And what they did is they went through and they documented pretty much where everything was in Iowa. And so you have all your habitat types, you have all the roads, you have all the churches, the schools, a lot of the buildings, fields, things like that. And so we're able to go and look and see when someone wants to donate a property or we're trying to restore a property, we can go back and see based on this document what used to be there. And that's important because if you're trying to restore a piece of property, you don't want to try to restore a timber, a forest, where there used to be a prairie. And so this helps us determine what used to be in Iowa back in the day. So the Muddy Creek property is what is outlined here in red. So it's just a 40-acre property. It's not very big. It's on Muddy Creek. This is Coralville down here, and this is North Liberty up here. You can start to see some of the things that we were talking about with habitat degradation, habitat fragmentation, already back in 1875. This is 12th Avenue in Coralville. You already had habitat fragmentation happening back then. It's not a big deal if you are a butterfly and you can just fly from one side of the road to the next, but this area also used to have a very high population of ornate box turtles. They're slow. They have shells, but there's nothing against the wheels of a car. There's nothing against the wheels of a wagon. There's probably ornate box turtles being killed on 12th Avenue with horse and buggies back in the day. This is the little symbol here. It's little trees. They call it, it's barrens, but it's basically savanna, what we call savanna now. And so what you can see is there used to be this horseshoe-shaped savanna that was present in this part of the state. It's still there, except it's all broken up. And so this area right here, you can still see there's still some trees. All the kind of darker stuff here is trees. All the lighter stuff is either fields or roads. And I also realized that when I put the slide in there, the dates got transposed. This is 1990, and this is 2016. So what you can see is that there was a lot of fragmentation happening between 1875 and 2016, obviously, but there was not a lot of destruction of habitat. A lot of this stuff is still fairly natural at that point in time, a lot less prairie, a lot less timber, but you still have fragments of it. By 2016, what do you have? Houses, lawns, roads, almost everything's gone there. It's very fragmented up. So now, even the butterflies can't really live there very well because they don't have much habitat. And if you're a turtle, best of luck to you. This is what it looks like in a zoomed in a little bit. And so again, same shape. This red border is the outline here. You zoom in a little bit. And then you can see what degradation looks like, habitat degradation. 1960, it was very open. This is a big hillside, basically. Muddy Creek runs right here. This is a big hillside that goes down to it. This is all very open here. So you had a lot of prairie, a lot of open space there, grasses. By 1990, you can see it's starting to fill in a little bit. By 2016, 2019, these slides are messing with me, it's almost 100% canopy cover. Why is that a problem?
It's all trees?
Yeah, it's all trees. So part of the problem is that there used to be a lot of species that would do very well living in this type of habitat that do not do well living under the canopy of trees. They need sunlight. If you have 100% canopy, you're not getting much sunlight on the ground during the growing season. Woodlands, one, it's hard to walk through them. There's great documentation of when they used to have wagon trains going through Iowa during the early settlement days. They would talk about being able to take ox carts, wagons, 3 wagons wide through any timber in the state of Iowa. That's how open they were. That's how few trees there were. But that's what Iowa natively was. Now, you can't hold hands with someone and walk through most forests in Iowa because there's so many invasive species. A lot of those invasive species are shrubs. Think about your honeysuckles, right? And so all that stuff grew up, and it's very dense, very thick. There's nothing growing underneath it because there's no sunlight reaching the ground. It's all being taken up by the invasive species. That's why we don't have grasses growing in Iowa woodlands anymore. There should be grasses. You should not have a lot of open, bare dirt patches in Iowa woodlands. What do you think it happened? 1960, it looks fairly normal. By 1990, it's starting to fill in. Why do you think that was? Everyone always says lack of fire. In Iowa. Hate to burst your bubble. It was gone for about 100 years by that point. European settlers were scared of fire because, for good reasons, it burned down all their houses and everything else. And so they stopped all fires when possible. But this is still fairly open. This is not. So that's a removal of a disturbance. In ecology, disturbances are often thought of as good things. And most people, when they think about disturbances, they're bad things. Ecological disturbances keep ecosystems fresh. So there was a removal of a disturbance here. It wasn't fire. What was it? Grazing. Mike, is that you? Yeah. Thank you. Grazing. So we took cattle off of this property in the 80s. And they were thinking, hey, it's a good idea. We're going to remove cattle because, grazing is not a natural thing in the state of Iowa. The problem is, all of a sudden, you removed one disturbance and you didn't replace it with another. And so now, fire was removed, but cattle were introduced. So you got rid of one disturbance, you put one disturbance back. Here, you've removed 2 disturbances, and it turns into this. This is complete canopy cover, and it's an unnatural ecosystem. Trying to put this back to something that's more natural is a ton of work. We're working on it. For those that haven't been there, go out to Muddy Creek Preserve sometime. It's absolutely amazing, but it's full of a lot of invasives. And so we're really attempting hard to get it back to this state. A couple projects that we're working on that you may have heard of. In Iowa, we have this really cool butterfly called the zebra swallowtail butterfly. Unfortunately, the host plant for this butterfly was the pawpaw tree. The caterpillar only eats pawpaw leaves. Pawpaw leaves, native in Iowa, but unfortunately, most of them are gone at this point. And so, working with Lon Drake and others, we decided to really push hard to try to get the zebra swallowtail butterfly back. Fairly successful. We've raised hundreds and hundreds of pawpaw trees at this point in time. Lon Drake, for those that know him, is an absolute master at this. When you go out to his property now, he has, I'm not sure the technical term, but I'm going to say flocks of zebra swallowtail butterflies. It's a very cool thing. They're very difficult, they're very flitty, and so they're very hard to get good pictures of, but it's the only black and white butterfly that you're going to see, so when you see it, it's very cool. We've been doing projects for a long time. We're still selling some pawpaws that we're growing from seeds. This was my house, outside of my house a couple years ago. If you haven't had them, the pawpaws this is the fruit. It's actually a tropical fruit that's native to Iowa. It tastes like a combination between a mango and a banana. It's very interesting. So some people love them. My wife hates them, but some people love them. Another thing that we've been working on over the course of the last couple of years is working to try to improve the ornate box turtle habitat in this county, actually in Iowa, in eastern Iowa. So we have this amazing species I've mentioned a couple times already. There's only 4 native box turtles in North America, and so it's a really interesting species. These things will live 40, 50, 60 years in the wild, and so it's one of those just really unique individuals. And in Iowa, in Johnson County, we have one of the largest populations up in the Hawkeye Wildlife Area. One of the problems that we have, though, is of all the habitat stuff that's happening, and so there's degradation of habitat up there. There's a lot of fragmentation with all the roads and everything else, and there's an airstrip and all of that. But the other thing is poaching. People go steal these. They sell them as pets. If you start removing too many females from isolated populations, you're going to have a population crash. And so we've been doing a lot of work to try to track the turtles up there. There's been researchers from Coe and Mount Mercy, and they've been doing some awesome stuff. We helped them out one year doing tracking them actually with the dogs, which was really cool. And then we're able to get a lot of good information. There's another population that we're working with, again in collaboration with a bunch of people, but the Big Sand Mound Prairie, have you guys heard of this? Okay, so I'm going to attempt to do some sort of a tour at some point in time. But the Big Sand Mound Prairie is a 500-acre sand prairie over in Muscatine. It's owned by Mid-American Energy and Bayer, B-A-Y-E-R, Bayer Chemical. They own the best sand prairie in the state of Iowa. They have the largest ornate box turtle population in the state of Iowa. And so you may think, Bayer, Mid-American Energy. The reality is they're doing a phenomenal job of keeping that prairie native with a couple different organizations to try to protect it. It is amazing. They have other species there that are very special and endangered, way more so than the ornate box turtles. And so what we're trying to do is get more people interested in it because, again, interest will breed excitement about helping fund some of the work that we're doing out there. 2025 was an interesting year. We've all kind of felt it in one way or another, and we took a hit in the last year. And so starting off in April, I've mentioned it a number of times, but we had our AmeriCorps program 6-ish years. It was doged, it was cut. I got a 2-hour notice, I had to fire 12 individuals. It's terrible. And so, like everyone else, we didn't know what to do. And then we decided to sue the Trump administration. And it wasn't an easy decision. It was something that our board discussed. Some of our board members are here. It was something our board discussed because we weren't necessarily sure what was going to happen if we did sue. But we sued, and we won. And then they basically were forced to give us the AmeriCorps program back. And then they did some other crazy things, and then we sued them again, and we won a second time. And so the reality is we still have AmeriCorps. If there's one thing that you could do at the end of this is contact your local legislators and let them know that the AmeriCorps program is absolutely vital to a lot of the stuff that we're doing in the state of Iowa. It is not just us, thousands of people that are impacted by AmeriCorps all across this state. They work with the youth, they work with before and after school programs, they work with elderly, they work with all sorts of individuals. And so this was an absolute gem of a program to have, and to have it taken away with a 2-hour notice was terrible. One of the other cool things that we were able to do this year, some of you may have been at the event, but we had Robin Wall Kimmerer come to Iowa to give a talk, and I had an opportunity to go out to, yeah, Robin was amazing. I had an opportunity to go out to one of our properties to give a tour to Robin, along with Charity Nebby and a couple other people, and it was magical. And if you haven't read Robin's books, please do. She really is a special person, and it was just a fascinating individual to be with for a very short period of time. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention, because we're doing it again in 2026, is we have this Backyard Biodiversity Project. And so this program has allowed us, we received some grant funding, And one of the things we're trying to do is get more native shrubs back into Johnson County. Native shrubs are important for a number of reasons. One being they are early bloomers. And so you have a lot of early blossoms on native shrubs well before any of your prairie plants are blooming. Why is that important? That is critically important for queen bumblebees. Bumblebees all die off at the end of each year, except for the queen, which goes underground, hibernates, comes up in the spring, and if there's no shrubs and other things that are early bloomers available, those queen bees are going to die. So that's why we're really trying to push the native shrubs. These are great to put even in yards, all over the place. We are going to be doing this again. They're totally free. We're giving away like 5 different species to people in Johnson County. The last thing I want to talk about briefly is the Coryell Nature Preserve. This has honestly been one of the highlights of my time in conservation. It's an amazing property. Has anyone been out there? A couple of people have been out there. We're going to do more tours this year. After you talk to your congressperson about AmeriCorps, the second thing I want you to do is sign up for a tour to go out here. It's one of the coolest properties I've been on in this state. So this was a century farm a family in Muscatine had. The Coryells live over here. There's a little farmstead here. They've been farming this land for over 100 years. Wayne was born on this land. And they decided that they wanted to protect it. They wanted to work with us to protect this land. So right now it's about 200 acres of some of the most unique habitat I've seen in this state. One of the wild things about it is that the interior is mostly sand prairie, and then the exterior of it is the Cedar River here, but then you also have this amazing Anna branch that runs around the outside that creates this really cool set of wetlands. You're probably thinking to yourself, what's an Anna branch? An Anna branch is when you have a river and then a stream comes off of that river and then reattaches. And so you see them a lot like down in Louisiana. They're not very common in Iowa. And so you have the Cedar River, this Anna branch comes off, and then it wraps around this Coryell property, and it just makes for a very unique habitat. So why is the Coryell Nature Preserve so important? It's because it has a lot of different things living on it. A lot of very unique things living on it. You have prairie crayfish. She didn't know that we have prairie crayfish. So what are prairie crayfish? Prairie crayfish are a crayfish species just like any other. They look like tiny little lobsters, but they don't live in the creeks. They live in the prairies. How do they do that? They need water to mate. They need water to live in. They burrow down to the water table. And then at night, they come up, and then they feed. There's less competition from other crayfish in the prairies. It's a very cool property because it has prairie crayfish. Soft-shelled turtles. We have 2 species of soft-shelled turtles there. Dragonflies. Terrestrial snails. You guys picking up what I'm putting down here with regards to the stuff that we talked about earlier? There's 9 species of bats in the state of Iowa, including 2 federally endangered bat species. The Coryell Nature Preserve, because it has so many different types of habitats, has all 9 bat species living on it. It's a very unique thing. Dung beetles. We have dung beetles.
Well, dung beetles are a good thing to have.
They're an amazing thing to have. And so one of the cool things, we were working, Jeff Klon, Jeff was coming out there before we actually had the property, and we were looking for insects, and he's a big beetle guy. And I found 1 beetle that day. It was a very cold day in September. I found 1 beetle. I collect it, give it to Jeff. He identifies it. It was the second time that beetle had ever been found in the state of Iowa. And so it's just that kind of that kind of place where you go out there, every time you go out there, you're going to see something new. So this is why the Coryell Nature Preserve is so important. This was that list from this report, Biodiversity in Focus, talking about how many different families are threatened with extinction. How many of these animal families are present at the Coryell Nature Preserve? We don't have shrimp, to my knowledge. We may have some sort of like small freshwater shrimp that I'm not aware of, but we have everything out there that is imperiled. We don't have all of this stuff. We're hoping that we have the Massasauga rattlesnakes, but we have not found evidence of them yet. They're in the area. There's a lot of cool stuff that's out there. So this is why we do what we do. There's very few properties, and this very easily could have been sold off and put into corn and soybeans. This could have been put into grazing land, but it wasn't. The Coriels did an amazing thing. I was too quick with the bats. So all 9 bat species. The bat species work has been very interesting. Fish and Wildlife have these systems. They're the little boxes that look like trail cams, and you can basically rent them from them. And what they do is they're recording the ultrasonic frequencies that bats use for echolocation. Every single different species of bat has a different pattern with their echolocation. And so what we do is we go out and record these things in various areas, run it through a piece of software, and it'll tell you what type of bat you have out there. It's a very cool thing. And so when we did it, the first time we had 8, and I'm like, it's too close to 9 to not get 9. And so then we put them back out there, and we got our 9th. It's a special place. The terminus of this Anna branch, before it goes back into the Cedar River, is a beaver dam. And if there's one species that has done an amazing work of environmental reconstruction, it is the beaver. And so this used to be a 10-foot wide stream outside the Coriel's house up here. They used to have a little bridge that went over it, and the beavers came in and dammed it up. And then that saturated the groundwater, and it made this amazing wetland that wraps around the entire property. You can actually see the little canal that the beavers use that they made over here. And they make these because sometimes there's low water, and they have a little area that they can still push stuff through. It's still wet. So there's a lot of cool stuff. If you ever get out there with me, I have this whole, we found some beaver skulls out there. There's a whole thing about literally the magic of beaver teeth. I would love to show you. You can see here all these dead trees. Obviously, this did not used to be a wetland. It used to be more of an open forested area. But when the beavers came in, saturated that soil, killed all those trees off, phenomenal habitat. Tons of bird species out there. If you go out there early in the morning, it's quite the treat. And turtles. 8 days after we acquired the Coriel Nature Preserve, we burned it for the first time. 8 days after. It had been 150 some years probably since they had fire on it in any sort. But that's how critical burning is to the work that we do. And it's out there burning. It really is one of the passions that we have because it's one of the best ways that you can manage habitat in the state of Iowa. So how can you help? What can you do? A couple things. I wouldn't be an executive director without saying donate. And so obviously, all the stuff that we do takes money, and so we encourage it. I don't donate to anything that I don't feel incredibly passionate about, and I feel incredibly passionate about Bur Oak enough that I've dedicated my career to it. And so, again, don't take that on face value. Come out and see what we do. I want you to experience what we do. I want you to see why this is so important in the state of Iowa. I mentioned we have a couple board members here. Go ahead and raise your hands, board members, in case there's any questions for you two. Excellent. If you're interested in being a board member for us, it's an open process where we take applications. And this is not something for individuals that are, you don't have to be a retired or attorney or a retired doctor to be on a board. We've had all sorts of individuals, including our youngest board member, I think, was 27. And so we encouraged high diversity within our board. And one of the ways that we do that is we have an application process. And so here is how you do it. buroaklandtrust.org/about, join the board. And then the other thing is, like I said, come out on a hike with us. So we do these pop-up hikes quite a bit because one thing that I hate is not being able to do a hike because of weather and things like that. And so what we'll do is when there's something cool happening, like this is the Carolina anemone. This is an endangered species that is only found in a couple places in Iowa. And it's at Coriel, of course. But we like to show those things off. So I can't tell you when they're going to bloom this year, but I can tell you when they do bloom, I want to take you out there. And we do that by posting these on our events page. And so it's like on our Facebook page, it's in our newsletter, and we also post on our events page. And so check in on that, sign up for those because we would love to get you out there to see some of these cool things. And that's it. So I am vastly over time. All right. Well, the first question has me looking something up here. All right. First question. Thanks for all the questions. Actually, really good ones. You mentioned that cedar trees are a problem in the Loess Hills. Are these the native plants? The answer is yes. And so the cedar trees that we have are not cedars. They're junipers. And the eastern red cedar is a native plant to Iowa. And it is actually a really good plant where it's supposed to be. Where it's not supposed to be is in prairies. And so it's one of those plants where it is not fire tolerant. When you burn them, you will kill cedars. And the cool thing about cedars is if you cut a cedar down, you don't have to worry about herbicide and stuff like that. It's dead. That's great. The problem is that they repopulate very quickly. And if you've ever seen, like when you're driving down the interstate, you'll see where there had been, one of those basically ditch fires that happens on the interstate. Because you'll have this whole expanse where there's nothing but cedars, and then you'll have absolutely no cedars for this patch. You're like, how did that happen? It's usually because a fire went through there. And so one of the biggest things, and if I wish, I'm going to have to add some photos, because the Loess Hills is such an important area. If you guys have not been there, it's amazing. One of the most important things in the Loess Hills is that they are trying to burn as much as possible, because it's the best way to get rid of cedars, and it really restores that fire regime. We have what's called a collaborative burn week. It's fire camp for adults. But for every spring we go out there, there's about 100-some people will get together. They come in from a wide variety of states, and we do prescribed fire, and it is amazing. And we do sometimes like 1,000-acre burns at a time, and it's absolutely wild. But the INHF, the county conservation groups out there, there's some other organizations. TNC is a big one out there. They're doing as much as they can to try to save the Loess Hills because that's such a unique habitat. There's only 2 places in the world that have hills similar to that. And this one is in Iowa, the other one's in China. So very important area. All right, the difference between prairie and savanna, trees. So you're going to have, prairie is almost completely dominated by grass and forbs, so grass and flowers. And then savannas are going to have some trees mixed in. We're not talking about very many. Usually your canopy cover is going to be no more than 20-ish%, Mike. What are we looking at? 20-ish% for savanna. If you guys don't know Mike Fallon, Mike teaches this stuff at the university. So if you have more in-depth technical questions, Mike is the man to answer those. Are they in competition with each other? They are not in competition with each other. It's basically the different biomes, different regimes. And so in a natural state, you would have areas that are prairie, areas that are savanna. You're not going to have really competition between the two, so to speak. Can individuals donate labor to your projects? Yes. So Bur Oak used to be completely voluntary, volunteer run. We had no staff members. All the work that was done was being done by an amazing group of volunteers, probably some of you in this room. And then a lot of things happened. One of them was COVID. And so we had to shut down everything with regards to our volunteer program. That being said, that's 4 or 5 years ago. And so what we're doing is we're actually rebuilding that program. People want to get out and work. People want to get out and help with this stuff. And so really it's our responsibility to try to find a way to do that. It's fun. It's cool to get out there and do these things. To kind of connect people with those projects. The volunteer projects are available on our website. And so I think we're going to put those under events. We're doing some website shuffling. Where are the cactus in Iowa? Sand. So a couple different answers to that. One, outside my house. If you have a house with a good southern exposure, get some southern sun, cactus do very well in urban settings. I had a neighbor that had some cactus. They were amazing. And so I got a cutting. The best way to take a cactus or grow a cactus is basically you cut off one of the pads. They're the opuntia cactus. You cut off one of the pads, then you take that pad, let it dry out a little bit, and then put it in dirt. And obviously the flower turns into a fruit. You guys are plant people. Who knows what the fruit of a cactus is called? Mike? Tuna. It's called a tuna. Thank you. I need Mike all my talk. This is working out well here. So yeah, it's called a tuna. I don't know why. There's probably some technical reason for it. But those are, you can eat those. The ones in Iowa are very small. They have a lot of these larger, big seeds in them. And you can actually grow small cactus from those seeds. We are doing, I forgot to mention this before, not a pop-up hike. This will be in June. So if you want to write this down. In June, we're doing cactus in Iowa is cool. Seeing cactus blooming in Iowa is amazing. They have these beautiful, big yellow and orange flowers. Completely dominates the plant. It's very cool. And so they are in, Eddyville has a big sand prairie. Over along the Mississippi, Muscatine, there's some sand prairie over there. That's where Big Sand Mound is. Every once in a while, you find these really cool sand prairies. Sand prairie is also a phenomenal place to build a house. And so what happened was people built houses on sand prairies, and there's no longer sand prairies. There's very few of them left. That's why we're trying to find the ones that are out there and protect them. Could a homeowner support the zebra swallowtail with a couple of pawpaw trees in their yard? Absolutely, yes. I was growing the picture that I had with all the small ones in milk crates. I had zebra swallowtails come to my yard, and I didn't even have them in the ground. They were in milk crates. And so, yes, you can. We do a project every year where we sell saplings that we've grown from Drake. So usually we'll have those available. I'm trying to think of the name of Max's company. Troutleaf. You guys are aware of Troutleaf? And so we actually work with Troutleaf to sell plants because we don't sell plants well, Max does, and so we work with him to actually do the distribution of plants. And so look for those. He'll have some this spring, I believe. But yes, you want at least 2 pawpaws, if not more, and they do kind of form, you'll get more pawpaws if you're not careful, and so just be aware that sometimes they spread a little bit. But you'll want 2 if you want fruit, so it's easy. This one, someone wrote in cursive, and I'm struggling a little bit. Can you explain how you can be confident that the locals return and the others will not? Someone wrote that? Yes.
After the burn.
After the burn, absolutely. And so we have, in Iowa, we have what are called fire-tolerant species. And it's you can kind of get really technical with this if you want to, but things like prairie grasses will do very well after burns because they've evolved with fire, and the parts of the grass that burn are not the parts that will regrow, resprout the new plants. And so it's the same reason. It's where the meristems are, for if you want technical. And so it's the same reason that cows can graze some grass down really short and other grasses they can't. And so a lot of the native grasses, the warm season grasses, have their meristems very quickly after a fire. Multiflora rose, for instance, grows at the tips, and so often the burns will kill off, at least top kill, the multiflora rose. And so it's dependent on whether or not it evolved in an area that had a lot of fire or not. And then also things like oak trees. Oak trees and maple trees both grow in Iowa. They're not both fire dependent, right? Maple trees grow in wet areas, and so they didn't evolve with fire. Oak trees grew in the prairie, in the savanna. They needed to evolve with fire. That's why you can take and scratch your fingernail on a maple tree, and you get through that bark, right? It's real thin bark. Oak trees have that real thick, corky bark, 3-some inches thick. You can't scrape it with your fingernail. What does that do? It insulates all the stuff on the inside that's causing the tree to grow. It insulates that from the fire. And so that's why when we talk fire-dependent and fire-tolerant species, they have all these different techniques that they utilize. And so oak trees utilize a real thick, corky bark to protect it from the fire, whereas maple trees didn't have to have that, and so they don't have that real thick bark. And so that's how we know, is we burn it, and then all the native stuff comes back because it is fire tolerant. This one's a tougher one. The sprawl around Iowa City and Johnson County since my childhood is continuing. How does zoning affect conservation, and what can concerned residents do? Housing versus nature seems like a false choice to me. It's a hard question to answer. So we all live in houses in Johnson County, or many of us are in Johnson County, and so we're part of this problem, if it is a problem. The issue is that if you choose to put things, houses, in areas that are still native and special, that's less attractive than putting them in areas that are less, native at this point. Going in, and they're actually trying to protect a lot of these areas. In Johnson County, there's what's called the Sensitive Areas Ordinance. I don't want to get into the real technicalities with this, but what it says is that if you're a developer and you're going to be putting in a housing area, you cannot impact the sensitive areas. What are the woodlands? They're wetlands, savannas. You can't impact those. If you do, you have to do what's called a mitigation. And that's when we kind of step into the process. We're able to work with developers to mitigate land. They have to impact this over here, so we're going to protect a whole lot more someplace else. So we're working with them to try to make it right, basically. What it allows us to do is it allows us to protect some pretty cool stuff in Johnson County. So it's a hard question. The development has to be sustainable. It gets even more complex when you take a look at things like solar farms. If you go up into Lynn County, a lot of people are talking about solar farms. Is it okay to put solar farms on agricultural land? Depends on what you think. Is it okay to put solar farms on prairie? No, right? And so it's like, so it's a very controversial topic. I'm for sustainable development as much as possible, doing it right, doing it correctly, thinking about how to best improve the habitat, not just going through and clear cutting and then planting some sticks in the ground and calling them trees. No one wants that. But like I said, we all live in houses, and so unfortunately it's just a reality of being in Johnson County. Okay, that's all the questions that are written down. No more questions. No more questions. Well, again, I want to say thank you. I greatly appreciate your time here. We are drawing for some prizes. I'm responsible for that. And then, again, I'll be here if people want to come up and ask questions to me afterwards. And also, I hope to see you out on some properties and working with us in the future. So thank you.